Whether you're managing a 300-acre estate or a small backyard patio, containers are a great way to bring vibrant color and focal points. And today, we're going to show you how you can do that. You won't want to miss it. So join us as we garden smart from Georgia.
The Safer brand organic lawn care program makes house calls. By ordering online, the lawn you want can be delivered right to your door. The Safer brand organic lawn care program is a proud sponsor of public television and GardenSMART.
I should be arrested for crimes against potted plant kind. My house is where plants came to die.
Miracle Grow potting mix is designed to help grow big, beautiful plants. Everyone grows with Miracle Grow.
Hey there, little Red Riding Hood. You sure are looking good.
There are so many advantages to gardening with containers, sometimes it's hard to know where to begin. For starters, containers are great for first-time gardeners. They're oftentimes much easier to work with than tilling the soil as they're higher off the ground, and that means less back pain. Containers are a great way to keep plants that may be prone to disease away from other plants where we don't want the disease to spread. It's also easy to move a containerized plant indoors if it's going to get cold. Containers are a great way to create a focal point or to add an accent to the garden. Containers are kid-friendly, and they're great for patios, porches, as well as small spaces. Haley Davis has an eye for interesting and unusual colorful container designs. In her time, she's planted hundreds, if not thousands, of containers. And today, she'll be sharing her wealth of knowledge with us. So stick around as we explore the ins and outs of gardening with containers. Haley, some of my favorite shows that we do are shows on containers, and I'm really super excited that that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
Whenever I meet a new gardener, I'm also very interested in knowing what got them involved in gardening or in horticulture.
Well, I think I've always enjoyed flowers and gardens. Have an experience with my grandparents and my grandmother taking me to garden club meetings, and I remember being passed around as a child to different ladies. I remember going and learning, and they would talk about a different plant each week.
So did you go to school for horticulture?
Yes, I went to Auburn University. I have a degree in horticulture landscape design.
Awesome. So what'd you do after school?
After school, I immediately started working for Gibbs Landscape Company.
All right, so you've got a lot of industry experience as well.
Yes, I've worked for Gibbs Landscape Company for 14 years, working in the seasonal color department, getting actual hands-on experience, maintaining the flowers throughout the season, seeing how they grow, and learning their growth habits, basically.
That's wonderful. How do you come up with your ideas for containers?
Well, I get inspiration all over the place. It can be from seeing someone else's design, to what color clothes I'm wearing that day. Inspires the color theme, and then I just enjoy looking at plants and thinking about what will work together.
Well, I know you've got a lot of really exciting containers for us to look at today. Let's dive in. What is it that you enjoy most about container gardening, Haley?
I think container gardening is a simple pleasure. It's not as time-consuming as planting a seasonal color bed. I'm not sure the last time you planted a color bed, but the last time I did, I was left extremely sore the next day from bending over to till the bed, to planting the flowers, and the shaping of the bed as well.
Well, that's a good point. There's quite a bit more time that's involved in, as you said, tilling up a plot of land. And containers become a very simple and practical way of having color. And especially in scenarios where many people don't have land that they can garden, you may just have a small patio or a deck. Containers are a great way to dive into gardening. And I think especially for folks who are new to gardening, containers are very simple, very practical. It's also a way to put collections of color exactly where you want them. I see that's what you guys have done here throughout the garden.
Yes, I think that containers is for the new generation or the next generation of gardeners. Living in an apartment with a small patio, you have the advantage of starting out, and that'll create interest for when they're older and enjoy it even more and have more time for it as well.
Sure. What are some of the things that we need to keep in mind as we're starting with container gardening?
I think the main thing with containers is to make sure that we have proper drainage.
So that's what we need to look at there then is the correct potting mix. We're not going to just put topsoil in a container because it's going to be too heavy. What should we use?
It's best to use potting soil because it's light and airy and it will allow the drainage of the water as it goes through.
Right, these mixes are specifically engineered for containers. So they're going to contain things like perlite, which is little volcanic white chunks of rock. They may have pine bark or peat, and they do a much better job of allowing water to drain through the media than topsoil would. There's a new innovation in potting soil mixes that I really like, and they are moisture control crystals. And what they do is when we water the container, they hold extra water. One of the issues with containers is they do dry out more quickly than something that's planted in ground, and that may for some folks make them not as practical because in many cases they may have to be watered once a day, or in the heat of the summer even twice a day. But these give you some extra time, and I think it makes it even that much more convenient for the gardener.
Well, also with pots, size does matter. The larger the pot, the more moisture it can hold. The more moisture it holds also means less frequently you have to water the pots.
Let's also discuss one of the most common mistakes that I think people make, which is not feeding their plants. You mentioned there are potting medias that come with fertilizers, but what if we have a media that doesn't? What would you recommend to us?
I would suggest you start off with a slow release fertilizer. This is a fertilizer that can release throughout the season, along with a liquid feed as well, every 2 weeks to a month.
That's great advice. There's of course, with the medias that we buy, there's almost never enough food in there to carry them through the entire season. And so in order to have big, healthy, vibrant containers, we do need to feed our plants. Choosing a container is a very personal decision. There's so many different colors and shapes, sizes, even designs. What are you looking for when you're trying to pick out just the right container?
First of all, I'd like to consider the house, the style of the house, as well as the environment that the container is going in.
That's a great point. Obviously if you have a house that has specific color schemes, say, specific colors of the shutters or the door, a container is a great way to either mirror those colors or complement them. So we do have to keep in mind the architecture and then also the colors that are present on that site.
Well, if you're standing in your kitchen and this is the area that you are in the majority of the time, and you look out, you want your containers to reflect what's on the inside. So you must consider from a design standpoint the concepts of the colors that are going on in there and make it work in the environment.
Last time I was in my home garden center, there were so many different choices. And specifically with regards to materials, we have terracotta, we have concrete, we have ceramics, we have wood. Which ones do you like, and what are some of the advantages or drawbacks of different types of containers?
One of my favorite containers is the concrete container. It holds the moisture the best, however, it is a very heavy product. Sometimes people don't find that the concrete containers give you such a wide variety of designs, but it is a great container. Another container is the ceramic container. The ceramic containers come in a variety of colors and shapes as well. Say if you had a hydrangea that's blooming blue, you have a nice blue container to complement that. Also, we have the terracotta. The terracotta container is a classic look. We see it throughout the gardens. It does release moisture, so you do tend to have to water more frequently.
Let me ask you about some of the new plastic or fiberglass. I'm even seeing foam pots on the market. Some of them are quite ornate and there's a lot of color choices there. What do you think about those containers?
I think the foam or lightweight containers are wonderful. They add in a little something extra that you can't receive from the concrete containers. They sometimes do lose their color.
Now, as far as placing the containers in the garden, here at Gibbs Gardens, there's so many wonderful ways that you've used containers. I love many of the long straightaways that are broken up by a container that kind of sticks out, and it forces the garden viewer to slow down, you know, kind of walk around the container, and then also you're using containers as focal points at the end of alleys. And how do you approach the process of figuring out where to place, especially your larger containers in the garden?
Well, container placement, that's a big deal. You want to make sure that the container is proportioned to the area. You have to think of where the containers go in. If it's going at an entryway, it's best to use like an urn as a center focal point. I like to do groupings of 3s or 5s, usually stepping down, like having a large plant in a large container in the center and 2 smaller containers on the sides. Gives you a very natural look.
It sure does. Designing a great container is actually quite a bit like designing a great garden, but it's just on a much smaller scale. When you're planning out your containers, Haley, how do you approach that process?
I feel like I'm a very visual person. I need to have images of the plant material in front of me. I like to have it on my computer. I like to take each individual plant and put it on a piece of paper and look at them working together and see how they're going to flow.
What would I do if I didn't have a special computer program to plan my container garden?
If you're, say, a homeowner and you're going to a garden center, how about stopping around and pick up plants and placing them next to each other and see what works well?
When we're planning our containers, the types of colors that we select, they set the mood for that space in the garden. What are you looking for from a standpoint of the kind of design and how that pairs with where the container is going?
If someone's requesting like soothing colors, I think of soft colors, whites and pinks. And if somebody's looking for a hot tropical look, I'll go with the yellows and reds.
Yeah, color definitely impacts our mood. So we're in a patio area here, and you've got nice, cool blues and whites, and it feels very tranquil. And then you've intermingled those with some dark green foliage. And but if we wanted a more, say, exciting animated container, we might go with warmer colors and use more yellows and reds and oranges. So it's definitely something to think about as we're building a container. What kind of mood are we trying to set with that collection of plants and even the container that we pick?
You want to think about where to place your containers on the property. If you're looking at a patio area, you want to look around and see where the movement of the people go, along with what area is highly visible but not being used. That would be considered a dead zone area, and you can just add a container in that area to give you a pop of color. Another great location for a container is somewhere that you can't have a flower bed, somewhere that you want to add color, where you want to accentuate the area. It's good to put a container under a tree or extreme shade where you can add some color there.
Haley, we've discussed some of the things that we need to keep in mind in selecting the correct container. Now let's talk about plants. What are you looking for?
I'm looking for plants that work well with each other. Looking for plants that are sun tolerant to go with sun tolerant plants, and shade tolerant plants to go with shade tolerant plants. Don't mix the two together. You're just asking for a disaster. The other thing is drought tolerant plants work well all the time normally. And then you add in with a plant that needs a lot of water. Well, then you have the chance to overwater the drought tolerant plants. So you need to make sure that they are consistent.
Haley, what are some practical ways that we can make sure that the containers we design are in harmony with what already exists in our garden?
Well, we need to look around our garden and observe what's going on. So if we have a whole bunch of yellows and reds in an area, mirror those into the containers. Creating harmony is also accomplished by using a tall plant with a bold shape, along with, say, like a filling plant with like a begonia as well. The dragon wing begonias or the whopper begonias come in as a great filling plant, as well as having something that hangs from the pot.
Now let's talk about how we achieve really nice and dynamic texture in a container. Some of the funnest pots that you have here at Gibbs Gardens are ones where you're blending a multitude of different textures. So you have, say, some spiky plants, you've got plants with really bold textures, and then those are intermingled with plants that have smaller leaves and softer texture. What's your design principle behind blending textures?
Well, textures, you're looking to mix like sharp, spiky objects with, say, dull to give you a nice feel. Along with, say, you can have a rough, coarse plant, along with a soft, smooth plant like a lamb's ear.
Now let's talk about the different kinds of plants. I see you use a lot of annuals in your container design, as well as sprinkling of perennials. How do you work with annuals and perennials together in a container?
Annual and perennials are great. People love perennials. Perennials come back each year, of course. And they do have a cycling bloom period of time where they don't usually bloom all season long. So we have the annuals to pick up where the perennials kind of die off at.
One thing I really love in container design, and I see that you've done it in many, many different places, is adding shrubs or woody ornamentals. And some very interesting winter pots that you have. I see you've got the red twig dogwood in a container, which adds this nice structural vertical element. I think oftentimes we think about containers in terms of exclusively color and bloom, and we can also create amazing containers with some of those really nice architectural, structural elements that trees and shrubs bring to the container. It's a great way to start a tree. So I'll start the tree in the container, use annuals or perennials as like my fillers and spillers. Then when that container's run its cycle, the tree's grown out for another season and is ready to go into the landscape.
Exactly. We can transplant our centerpieces onto other places once finished. I think the lifespan is 2 to 3 years for a tree to be in a pot. But they do add, like, you can get so much from them with the spiral, a topiary look, which give you something of interest during the wintertime because we are limited during the winter months.
Haley, let's show people how quick and easy it is to build a beautiful container.
Okay, well, let's start first by checking to make sure we have a drainage hole because this is the most important part of the pot process. Then we'll be adding the filter fabric in so that we don't clog our drainage hole. And we need to add 3 to 4 inches worth of gravel in the bottom. Okay, that's great. And then we kind of just wrap the gravel up with the filter fabric so that none of our rocks escape and clog the hole.
Nice. And now we're going to add the potting medium.
Oh yes, let's add that.
This is a really nice potting mix that has a fertilizer incorporated into it, so this will give the plants a great head start.
We don't want our soil level to be too low, but we don't want it to be too high either because once we water the containers, we don't want anything to spill out as well. Then we need to think about where we're viewing this pot from. Are we looking at this container? Is it like a centered thing that people are going to be walking around, or is it going to be against the wall? So let's say this one's going to be against the wall. Okay. So if it's against the wall, we're going to put our accent plant in the back of the pot. There's no need to put it in the center of the container when you're going to be missing the plant material in the back.
This is a canna lily that's going to be our vertical accent?
Yes. This is going to be our accent plant. This is going to be our attention-grabbing plant. And it's going to have this bright yellow color. It is a tropical canna, so it only gets about 3 or 4 feet tall. We're also going to add in some coleus. The coleus this is carnival coleus. It's a little bit of a lacy feel to it. So we're going to give this to the back of the pot. We're going to do 2. You don't always have to have even numbers. This is going to be a balanced, a symmetrical look. So having this being a symmetrical look, we don't have to have the third. Our next plant, we're going to have, after we have the lacy, we're going to go with the spike. So we'll have the blue salvia. I think this is actually velocity blue salvia.
Nice.
It's a very nice heat tolerant plant and strives, especially late August. It really picks up. The next thing we're going to do is add in the dragon wing begonias. Dragon wing begonias are great plants because they bloom late in the seasons.
Some other plants that you've pulled also, Haley, that I think are worth mentioning. You've got these beautiful mandevillas that would also be a nice vertical accent. This is one called Sun Parasol that's a relatively new introduction. And you know, for many people with mandevillas are thinking, well, it's a tropical, you know, in the past they've been a somewhat rangy plant. But Sun Parasol is one that is a great climber. It's also super dense and has more flowers than any other mandevilla I've ever seen, as well as some really rare deep crimson and red colors. Another brand new plant that I love using in containers is the Paracalis, and there's probably 5 or 6 different colors and all different shades of blues and purples. It's a distant cousin of Cineraria and is one of the most powerful bloomers in a container. It's basically an annual. It works well in kind of the cooler transition seasons. Doesn't like, you know, temperatures that are too cold, and it actually stops blooming if the temperature is too hot. But for the spring and the fall, I think it's one of the most impactful plants to use in a container, and it's one that, you know, you should be able to find in your garden center.
Yeah. We also have to think about our trailing plant material. We're going to use some petunias. Petunias are great for pots. I don't so much love them for beds, but pots I'm a fan of. We're going to use the yellow of the lantana, the new gold lantana. It's a nice hanging plant, and it picks up the yellow from the cannas too. Our coleus is going to have a chartreuse color in it once it matures. So I think it would be good just to add a touch of the sweet potato vine. The sweet potato vine is a great plant. It can grow a little bit out of control. So you do have to maintain it and trim it during the season. And some people do want it to grow out of control, of course. And just remember, pots are not flower beds. You can put more plants in them. This is going to be a little bit chaotic, yet it's going to have structure because of the textures of our foliage. With the bold, the lacy, the spike, the bold again, and the coarse filling will give you a structured look.
This looks like it's going to be a great container, Haley. Shall we get our hands dirty?
I think so.
All right. Break the root systems up a little bit, especially on some of these larger plants. We don't want circling roots, and they tend to integrate better with the potting media that we're using if we do that.
And also, let's make sure that we plant the plants even with the soil. Don't bury too deep.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Root systems of plants like to live for the most part in the top 2 inches of soil. So if you do bury a plant, you're creating problems for yourself before you even get started.
Exactly.
Okay, Haley, we have our container planted, and we definitely don't want to miss the final, most important step, and that is making sure everything gets watered in well. As we're planting this, we're creating little pockets of air, and of course that's not good for the root system. We want the roots to integrate well with the potting media, and so we need to thoroughly water this in. And we're going to use a liquid feed so that the plants get a really nice jump start right off the bat.
Another good thing is we did the final touch of adding the pine bark. Not only is it decorative, but it has a function of keeping in the moisture.
That's a great touch. Haley, thank you so much for spending the day with us and sharing your wealth of knowledge on containers.
Thank you for having me.
Another show, another amazing garden. We hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we've enjoyed producing it. If you watch the show, you know we travel the country visiting beautiful gardens. Well, we have a surprise in store for several in the audience. To learn more about the surprise, visit our website at GardenSMART.com.
The Safer Brand Organic Lawn Care program makes house calls By ordering online, the lawn you want can be delivered right to your door. The Safer Brand Organic Lawn Care Program is a proud sponsor of public television and GardenSMART.
I should be arrested for crimes against potted plant kind. My house is where plants came to die.
Miracle Grow potting mix is designed to help grow big, beautiful plants. Everyone grows with Miracle Grow.
Hey there, little Red Riding Hood. You sure are looking good.
Container gardening continues to be one of the most popular forms of gardening around, and today's garden design expert has armed us with some great advice that'll help us be more successful year-round. If you have questions about anything you've seen today, visit us on the web at GardenSMART.com. And remember, even if you're a master gardener, there's always more to learn. So join us next week for more great gardening tips and ideas as we garden smart.